Oh man. I normally like to coordinate what I wear with what I'm talking about, and I guess technically I am because I'm still talking about the MonsterVerse and Godzilla, but normally in the Monarch videos I like to wear something a little more grounded to Monarch or Godzilla 2014, but oh well, we're just gonna roll with it because I'm too lazy to go change. You know, sometimes I'm just so tired that I'm like, is it worth filming a video? But honestly, sometimes filming a video wakes me up, so we're gonna hope that that's the case today and that I get more awake the longer I do this video. Alright. What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing another Monarch News Roundup. Today's video we will be talking about events that happened in June 2022. For those of you who don't know what I'm doing with the MonsterVerse News Roundups, basically I'm making my way chronologically through the MonsterVerse's news and updates, and I'm progressing as they progressed back in the past, because of course I was not there to cover all that stuff, so I'm doing it now. So for people who get confused, that's what's going on. Starting out, we're going to be talking about something that is either old or new, depending on the way you view it. We are going to be talking about something that was originally started back in May of 2018, but only saw a proper release in May of 2022, and that was The Aftermath, which was a MonsterVerse short fan film. This was written and directed by Chris Mirjahangir over at Toho Kingdom, so big shout out to him, and it sort of functions like a weird bridge between Godzilla 2014 and King of the Monsters. This was of course pre-King of the Monsters. It's not supposed to be canonical to those movies. Kind of the pitch is a girl is filming an email, a video email that she is sending to her mother who's in a coma following the 2014 attack of San Francisco. This girl's mother was harmed by Godzilla, and she brings up some interesting points that actually were touched on in Godzilla King of the Monsters, such as Godzilla killing a lot of people in the path of killing the Mutos, and does that make him a hero, or does that just make him another monster? There's also an interesting idea that is present here, which is this residual radiation that causes the film to glitch out, which of course is something that the MonsterVerse sort of touched on with its weird Titan radiation thing that it brought up in King of the Monsters and seems to have forgotten about, probably for the better. And then the film ends where she mentions that she is joining this rival group who is a rival to Monarch and stands for everything they stand against and wants to eradicate the Titans. And in a way, you can kind of, if you want to believe this is your headcanon, you can kind of believe that she's joining Alan Jonah's group, which is a lot of fun. Obviously, that's not what happens because this was before King of the Monsters and has no sort of relation to canon, but it's still fun to think about. I've seen some people say that this could function as like a neat little special feature or bonus feature to the MonsterVerse, to the Godzilla 2014 film or something like that. And of course it could. The only thing you'd have to really change about it is you'd have to get rid of the reference to Anguirus and Baragon, and then you're good to go. But Chris posted this back in May 2022, and so I wanted to highlight it here because of course it is a fan project relating to the MonsterVerse that I think is quite interesting, and because Chris is a friend of mine. Alright, let's continue with the news, shall we? This is exhausting, man. KDM teases that Godzilla Awakening will be important to the MonsterVerse and to the Monarch show. I'm hoping, as I've said in previous videos, that it is taking elements from Godzilla Awakening that it likes and doing its own thing with those elements, and so we can go, oh, Awakening is still the soft canon that it has always been, because you can't make that comic book canon. Serizawa is not an 80-year-old man carrying that nuke up a cliff to go meet Godzilla in King of the Monsters. If we were to believe that Godzilla Awakening is canon, that means that Serizawa was 74 years old during the events of Godzilla King of the Monsters, and I don't believe it. Ken Watanabe was 58 in Godzilla King of the Monsters, so there's just no way, guys. He's not playing a 74-year-old man. Not to mention the weird panels in Godzilla Awakening that make literally no sense to anybody, and there's sailboats 65 million years ago, and Godzilla walked on all fours and had big arms. There's so much in that comic book that's just bad, and it's just like glad they're ignoring it for the most part, so I'm very curious to see just truthfully how important Awakening is. We know that some characters from Godzilla Awakening like Shaw are going to be in the new Monarch show, but that doesn't mean that Godzilla Awakening is canon entirely. It just means that, hey, maybe some stuff similar to this comic book happened. I'm spending too much time on this. I'm going to keep it moving. There's some Monarch crew updates. We got a ton of Monarch crew updates. I'll cover a couple of those in this video, but basically for this first Monarch crew update, we see filming was slated to start June 27th in Vancouver, Vancouver at Vancouver Film Studios, and the ending date was scheduled for December 19th. There were also new production managers and crew members added, including casting directors and casting development workers. A location manager also joined the crew. Character bios were updated for the Monarch series, although they're not big updates, so we're not going to have to run through all of them. Basically, what we now know is that Hiroshi will be a character that is seen in flashbacks and in present. They are having a young and old Hiroshi. So the young Hiroshi is 5 and is in flashbacks that will mostly be set in Japan. This would be roughly 1964-ish, according to Hiroshi's age. And the Monarch timeline, which I'm hoping Legendary hasn't forgotten about, I certainly haven't, shows quite a bit of period between 1959 and 1973. So this is uncharted territory that we can expand and develop that will not bump into any existing canon in the MonsterVerse. So there's a lot of time to play around here. I'm gonna assume, because we're jumping around so much in the timeline, that maybe we're gonna see a couple different age variations of Hiroshi. That's just a guess. But for what we do know, we're gonna see a 5-year-old version and we're gonna see an older modern day version. Maybe there won't be enough time to show anywhere in the middle of 5 to modern day Hiroshi, just because of we're playing with the 50s through the 60s, and we would have to jump into like the 70s to see a bit more of an aged up version of him. KDM teased that some guest stars would be appearing. I'm not sure who all this refers to. I'm not expecting to see an Ashiro Serizawa. However, I do think that there is some small potential to see an Eiji Serizawa. Of course, if Awakening is going to be relevant again, that would be interesting. I also think obviously we're going to see that Shaw character, and I think that's what this teaser is referring to, is the Russells, Kurt and Wyatt Russell. Not the Russells from Godzilla King of the Monsters, but Kurt and Wyatt Russell. And then I think there is potential to see Bill Randa. I think that we could potentially see Bill Randa. The final update was a new character named Caroline, who is a reoccurring character. She is female, mid-50s, Japanese American, a powerful force, spiritually born, and raised in the East Bay, who is sarcastic yet warm. I don't really know where the East Bay is, but I think it might be around San Francisco, so that would still kind of check out with where this show takes place. Caroline is Kate's mom and Hiroshi's first wife, which confirms a theory I had in previous videos, which is that I thought Kate and Kentaro were going to be brothers related through Hiroshi, and this confirms that. I'm assuming Kate's going to be the older half-sister, and that her and Kentaro probably aren't going to have a great relationship before the events of this show, and that this show will force those two families together in there, and they're going to start exploring Hiroshi's connections to Monarch, and they'll dive into the show that way. We learned that she currently lives in San Francisco, and then we also learned that Kate, who is the lead of the show, is a former teacher who travels to Japan to settle family affairs, but uncovers new trauma that she must not run from that leads her to dig into her family's history with Monarch. So again, I think she's gonna go there. I think her mom's probably gonna die in the events of San Francisco. I'm still placing my bet that Godzilla is gonna be the one to kill her. I think it's gonna be during an iconic Godzilla 2014 moment, so my guess is just like in the last video. It's either gonna be the Golden Gate Bridge or it's gonna be one of the sequences around the atomic breath moments. I don't know when. It could be kind of I don't think they're gonna do this, but just as a dark pitch for you guys, it'd be kind of funny if she was in the building and then she didn't get to evacuate in time, was just hunkered down, and when Godzilla tail swipes the Muto into the building, he smushed her. That'd be kind of a fun GMK-esque moment. They're not gonna do that, but that'd be funny. But if she's a recurring character, maybe she won't die, but I think she's gonna get severely injured at the very least. I think Godzilla is gonna severely injure her. She's gonna go to Japan, and then her and Kentaro are gonna, for some reason, come together and start digging into Hiroshi and his relationship with Monarch. We have our very first set of cast members for the Monarch series. I'll run through them very quickly for you. Anasawi plays Kate, Ren Watabe plays Kentaro, Kiersey Clemens plays May, Joe Tippett plays a character named Tim, who I'm not sure who that is. I don't think we have a character bio for a Tim yet. We'll have to wait for more info on that. And then Eliza Lasawisky plays a character named Duval, who again, I don't know who that is. I've never read a bio for those people. If I would have had to guess, they're going to be like soldiers or related to Monarch. They'll probably be workers at Monarch, or maybe if they're not, they'll probably be soldiers. I don't know. But that's our very first cast update. So they're not going with like major known actors, but they're also not going with total unknowns. Now that Anasawi, I believe she has connections to the Fast and Furious movies, so it's not like these are people who have never been in films before. It's just, it's not going to be like Ken Watanabe, who was a bit bigger of a name by the time they signed him for the 2014 film, or Bryan Cranston, of course. But maybe because of this show, they'll become big stars, like what we saw happen with Aaron Taylor Johnson and Elizabeth Olsen, although they were aided by Avengers Age of Ultron as well, which they had already signed on to before Godzilla. We have another Monarch crew update. Now this one doesn't give us a ton more information. We just see that additional PAs were signed on to the project, project, and then a following crew update showed that more location crew was added, casting was added, ADs were added, which is assistant directors, such as Jim Brevner, who we talked about in a previous video, who was the first AD second unit on Godzilla 2014, and he's returning as first AD here. So if he was first AD second unit is without Gareth Edwards. That's a second unit who typically goes and does shots that are deemed not very important by the studio, such as B-roll of the city or footage of the destruction scenes or maybe the aftermath scenes, anything that doesn't really involve the principal cast, and that's what Jim Brevner would have been involved with. In the last video I talked about this stuff. I talked about how a lot of people were really excited to see him return. It's not like this is a creative force of the Monsterverse coming back to us. He's just a scheduling kind of guy. We got some info on where the Monarch show would be filming outdoors. It would be shot in a neighborhood in downtown Vancouver, and this would be where the aftermath of the Titans battles with the refugees would take place. The Monsterverse is no stranger to filming in Canada, and for those people who are curious, like, hey, wait a minute, 2014 took place in San Francisco. Why are we shooting in Canada and not San Francisco? Well, Godzilla 2014 also shot a bulk of its San Franciscan scenes in Canada. Although those were not filmed in Vancouver, those were filmed in Westminster, Canada. A lot of the Godzilla 2014 destruction scenes and aftermath scenes and final battle scenes were shot in Canada. The Monsterverse is no stranger to using Canada as a substitute. I've got one final production update for you guys here, and it states that the working title for this show was still Hourglass as of June 27th, 2022, and I believe in modern day, I'm recording this on March 20th, 2023, I believe it's still going under the working title Hourglass, and they don't know what the show is going to be called yet. It might just be called Hourglass. As a lot of people have pointed out, the reason the show can't be called Monarch is because a different show called Monarch has already started airing. This is being listed as Season 1, which means they're leaving the door open to future seasons, and there's so much room on that Monarch timeline for you to explore in future seasons. Everything from the birth of Monarch in the 1940s all the way up to Kong Skull Island, everything from Kong Skull Island to Godzilla 2014 still needs to be fleshed out properly. It'd be interesting to see a show that touches on those big key events in the Monarch timeline and shows us like what was the Great Smog of London. Stuff like that would be really cool for a future season, or if you wanted to keep it more modern day, we need to flesh out the time period between Godzilla 2014 and Godzilla King of the Monsters. Although there's not a ton of room to play around there, you really only have the year 2014, which already has Godzilla Aftermath, which comes in late 2014, and this show, which is set in early 2014, so 2014 is pretty crowded. But there's also a gap between Godzilla King of the Monsters and Godzilla vs. Kong that lasts 5 years, where Godzilla does a whole lot of beaten up monsters around the world. That would be another fantastic period to explore. That could also have us go to Skull Island and start setting up the dome and seeing how things wound up the way it wound up in Godzilla vs. Kong. I don't know if they're actually going to do that ever, but I'm just saying, in a future season of this show, there is the possibility they visit that stuff. And then there's also, I believe, a time skip between Godzilla vs. Kong and the new Kong movie with Godzilla, which would mean that there's another gap that you can fill out with the Monarch show. It'd be interesting if every season they're filling out a new gap between Godzilla movies. And according to this update, the production schedule was for June 27th, 2022 through December 15th, 2022. So basically almost the same schedule as we heard earlier, just give or take a couple days. And next up, KDM posted a teaser for Hiroshi. I believe the picture he posted with it comes from Kong Skull Island, but he stresses the importance of satellites in this project. Of course, Hiroshi is relating to satellites, what they can see and how important they are. Maybe they're locating Titans via satellites, kind of like they did with Skull Island. How they can see large portions of the Earth at once and collect data quicker than instruments on the ground. And then finally, on June 27th, 2022, the Directors Guild of Canada updated saying that production had officially begun, so you can see the production update here from the Directors Guild of Canada. I'm uncertain if that actually was the day that filming began, but I believe it was, because all of the evidence would suggest that it was. Which means that moving forward with our chronological recap of Monsterverse news, we are now into the era of filming. Filming has begun. That's exciting stuff. I know there's a lot of public filming that was seen, so there's a lot to talk about. Alright, I'll end it off here, guys. I want to give a huge thank you to all my patrons on Patreon for helping keep the channel running. It really does mean a lot to me, and it goes a long way towards supporting the channel and supporting me. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below, where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you guys next time for the next one. D-Man, out.